Hello, everyone. It's RBB. Wanted to talk today real quick about three-point lighting because I'll refer to it pretty often, and it's important to kind of understand what three-point lighting is and the purpose it serves. It's probably the most common, maybe most basic type of lighting your subject, whether you're taking a picture IRL, if you're taking a picture in real life, or you're creating a digital scene. In order for us to see form, we have to have light. And we looked at that when we made a scene the other day where we added the sky dome in the back, right? Because otherwise Arnold won't see anything. If you have no light, we can't see any form. If we have light that comes from everywhere, it's very difficult for us to tell where something is in space, how big something is, how close it is to something else, because we need the shadows in order for us to see three dimensions. So if you look at the screen right here, this is just a sphere, and it's sort of shaded for us so that we can tell that this is a sphere. Maya just does it for us because remember, Maya just sees this. So it does it for us to sort of say, hey, you know what? This is a sphere. Otherwise, it would look like a gray dot. It would look two-dimensional without any sort of shading. But we want to light it a little bit more sophisticated, of course, than that. And when you learn to probably shade things, you ever drew any basic shapes or anything like that in any kind of art class? I know in scientific illustration class, we had to do the basic shapes in whatever medium we were working in. If it was, airbrush or carbon dust or whatever we were doing, we would do the basic shapes and shade them. So let's talk about what three-point lighting is. I'm going to put a little image up on the screen. This is an example of what three-point lighting, the functions that three-point lighting serve. The 3-point light, the 3 points are the key light, which is the main, usually the most intense light, the thing that's lighting something up, the ceiling lights in your room, the flashlight shining on something, the sun. It's the main light. Okay, the second part of three-point lighting is the fill light. Now, unless you're in outer space where you've only got light coming from, say, the sun or reflecting off of something, if you were on like, say, the moon, the other side of the moon away from the sun is completely black because there's nothing reflecting light back into that blackness. So wherever your light is shining, there's a terminus, right? Where because the light is hitting the surface, it's falling off as it goes around the curve, and then the rays just go past and it will be completely black. And that's really weird and artificial. Even when we have space movies, they put some kind of fill light in the background. It's of course not realistic the way it would look in space. All the times that I've been in space, I can tell you. And the third part of three-point lighting is the rim light or backlight. That's a little bit harder to achieve because what that does is it's called other things too, like in film and stuff too, but it usually is the light that defines the edge of the form. And I'm going to see if I can find a picture and show you. You see it a lot in things like film noir and things like that. It's very obvious, but it just helps to kind of to separate your object from the background. You can get away with not doing the rim light or the backlight if it's hard to get in 3D, but for sure you need to deal with the key light and the fill light. So some people may say, well, how many lights does it take? Well, duh, it takes three. Not necessarily. It's fulfilling three functions: the key light, the fill light, and the rim light. It takes as many lights as you need in order to get the look that you want. So you probably have one main um, key light, like the sun. You don't get to add an extra sun. But if you need the sun to, bounce into a shadow area, that's a fill light. And you may have several fill lights doing, different things. Or if you've got several objects and one of them is occluding the light and casting a shadow, you might need some fill in that area. So let's set this up really quick just to sort of show you how you can play around with this. So I made this scene real quick. And of course, set project, YouTube practice, set. Okay, so I made this ground plane here and I made a sphere, which I didn't name. So do as I say, not as I do. But I just wanted to add some lighting. We went over the other day how you set up your render settings right here next to the hypershade bubble there. We set up the render settings, and I've already done this. Okay, I've already changed it to PNG, and I turned off the skip alpha. I don't need to change anything here. I changed my renderable camera to the camera I just created, and I set it to 1080, which is fine. Just for practice, you could always do 540 or something. It doesn't need to be full resolution. Okay, if we were to render this right now, so I'm in the Arnold tab, and you see my lights over here, and you see my render tabs. If I rendered it right now, we would see nothing, which is exactly what we expect because we don't have any lights. If we were to add the sky dome, okay, the dome light, and rendered that, okay, this is very like artificial kind of if this was in a movie, I would assume that I was in some sort of dystopian laboratory type dream because the light is too diffuse. If it weren't for the fact that this sphere is touching the ground and having some kind of cast shadow and ambient occlusion, it'd be very difficult to tell, like, is this a wall that's half painted white and half painted gray, and then there's this gray dot? There's not a lot of lighting here to tell us what's going on. So we're not going to use that light. In fact, I'm going to throw that light away. It's going to go back to dark. Okay, so what we are going to do, though, is just to show you what the lights do, we're going to play with the area lights. So that's this first light over here. And when we create that light, of course, it's created at the origin. I'm going to make it much bigger. Okay. And I'm going to turn it so you can kind of see what's going on. See that stick that's sticking out of it right here? That's the way the light is pointing. The light is shining over here. Right? And now what I want to do is I want to position my key light. Generally, the key light is 45 degrees or so, right? We don't want to light something directly from the top or directly from the bottom, right? Like when you hold the flashlight under your chin and look all spooky. So 3-point lighting looks good, somewhere between about 45 to 60 degrees, from the air, right? This side and this side. Also, it is about 45 to 60 degrees away from the camera. So again, if you look at that image we saw about the 3-point lighting, if you look at where the camera is, the key light is not only about 45 degrees up, 45 to 60 degrees up in the air, right? Shining down on something, but it is also 45 to 60 degrees around from the camera. Okay. Now, this is probably not very bright. It's a white light. Let's see. I'll bet if we render, it won't show anything. Ooh, okay. Nada. Okay. Because it's not very bright. So let's up the intensity of this light. In fact, let's leave the render on so we can see what we're doing. And I'm going to the exposure of this light a bunch and up the intensity a bunch. In fact, let's go ahead and do like a bunch, like 50. Boop. Okay. Now you can see that this right now is our only light. It's our main light, but it's also our only light. And where the light falls off, it hits that terminus, right? And then it becomes black. Now, because Arnold is awesome the way that it renders, it softens these shadows. These are things you just have to dial in by yourself. And this type of lighting is very soft and diffuse because it's like shining through one of those big white reflector type lights. Okay, so you can adjust this light in several ways. One, of course, you can bring it closer to your object, just like if I was a photographer and I brought that light right up in your face, it would be brighter. We also can up the intensity of the light. Okay, and you get the exposure of the light too. Sorry for that noise. I'm in for a second there. All right, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to up this intensity to 100. And this is pretty bright. Now, I may or may not be shining exactly where I want to. Like right now, this ball, you see from the shadow, the light is shining just sort of beyond halfway. So of course we can, in the panels here, we can look through selected and we can see in relation to our camera, right? There's our camera over there. So I think about like 40 to 60 degrees, right? We'll light the back of our object because we don't care. So looking at this, there we go. This is a little bit better. So it's more the lighting you would kind of do if you were shading. Now, no, there's not this black terminus right here that just turns to black, which it normally would in digital lighting, except Arnold is cool enough to know that it would bounce off of this surface. So we have this key light here, but we also have this a bounce light. If we lower this guy out of the way, so there's nothing for it to bounce off of, that is more like what the light is doing. Okay, so we could actually just move this floor for right now. This is what the key light is doing. So that's great. That's exactly what we want to see. But we're not in space, so we'd like to see like what's going on. I want to see kind of what's going on over here, but I don't want it to be this bright. So we're going to create another light. Okay, and this one, in fact, let's name these. This first one is the key light. Okay, and this second one, it will be our fill. I'm going to call it fill one because I might need more than one. All right, so let's move this guy off to the side. You don't need to be so big. I gotta be all big. Okay. All right, so I am going to look through that light. I'm driving it around like it's a camera. Okay, and I can see there's my key light, right? And I can see there's my camera. Okay. Now this is right up in the face of this guy, but it still is like 40, 45 degrees around from the camera. So I know that the light that I am right now, the fill light, needs to be on the opposite side, right, of the camera, and not exactly opposite of that light, but filling in that darkness. Okay. So let me get a little closer here and let's look at our render and see what this light is doing. Of course, it's not doing anything in particular right now. Get bigger, like Apache Chief. Get big, Apache Chief. Do you guys remember Apache Chief? Probably not. Was a one of the Super Friends back from the 70s, like in Hall of Justice. Anyway, whatever. Okay, so I'm gonna the fill light is not as intense. So let's make this one, let's say 25. It's half as bright. Okay, and we're gonna up the exposure a little bit. Now there you go. We're starting to see it over here, and it's not exactly right. I wanted to kind of fill in here, right? So here I am. I am the light. I'm gonna fill in like maybe I'll move in a little closer. In fact, I don't think I need to be closer. I think I need to be bigger. So I'm going to switch to my perspective camera. I'm going to look at that light I just made and make it larger. See what it's doing? So this is filling in that darkness and may also be a little bright for fill light. Let's go down a little. Let's try like 20 years, maybe less, 50. There we go. So now it's not, we're out in space, right? And there's nothing here. Now, this light, I could try making it really big and trying to get every little bit here. But I think what I probably want to do is actually wind up with more than one light. So this light, remember this light too also can be different shapes. Be shaped like this, right? Doesn't have to be square. In fact, I can even change the shape somewhere. You can change the shape of that light. What shape it is. I forget where, somewhere around here. Anywhere, anyway, someone, Bueller. Okay. But I would probably have one more fill right there. Now, that's assuming also that this thing is just like it is, floating around out here like some kind of planet. If we brought our ground plane back up, right? If we brought our ground plane back into the mix here, now we're going to get a different type. Look at the shadow on the bottom, that fill light, because it's creating some bounce light from the floor. Okay, that's good. All right, let's go back to our camera. Okay, so now our fill light and our key light are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're the main light, but they're filling in this background here, so it's not quite as dark. Now, depending on the look you want to go for, let's try doing a rim light just for giggles. Right, I'm going to look through this one just to show you. And I'm going to turn around. Now, the room light is usually directly opposite the camera. My camera is right over there. There's the camera. Okay, I want to be opposite camera, and I want to be peeking over my object, kind of like I'm coming up above the horizon. Now this light tends to be very bright. I'm going to say 100. Let's see what if I could do it here. Let's see 100. Let's exposure. Okay. Now it's not doing so great right there, but see that? Whoop, that's the rim light. Okay, that little bit right there. I'm not going to spend a ton of time farting around with the rim light because I'd rather you get the other function lighting right. Okay, that's not too bad. Okay. Yeah, that's not so bad. So this light right here, we're going to call this one the rim light. Okay. So in theory, what this is doing is it is functioning as we've got a key light, we've got a fill light, and we've got a rim light. Okay. Now, what we don't want is this super bright light necessarily like shining on the ground right there, right? Our lighting is supposed to be coming from here. So we have this awesome thing you can do, which we're probably not going to talk about today, and that is that we can do light linking. I can tell this light to shine on this ball and not on the floor. Okay. The heck? I guess I'll show you. You know what? I'm just winging it today. That's what I'm doing. Okay. So we've got this. No, we don't have this labeled. Let's label this so we know what it is. This is our ground plane, and this is our object. I was going to say object dart, but anyway. Okay, there's our object. So what we want to do is we want this rim light to be able to affect this sphere, but not the ground plane. To do that, and there's probably other ways too, but under Windows, where we can find most of the tool sets and functions and things, we have a ton of other editors that are just sort of shoved into this drawer. And what we want is a relationship editor. Okay, which makes sense, right? What is the relationship of the rim light to the objects? So in under Windows, where we find lots of menus, under relationship editor, we want light linking. And you can go by the object or by the light. Doesn't really matter in this case since we have one object and one light, doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go, let's do light centric. So it will bring up this little menu here and it says, here's your lights, okay, and the default one that it had for us. And these are the things it can affect. So the key light can affect everything. The fill light can affect everything. The rim light, oh, we don't want it to affect everything. We only want it to affect this. Okay, so you can see when I turn that off, it's no longer shining that super bright light on the ground. Watch. Now it is, now it's not. We were able to link this light into somehow say, okay, magically, somehow just shine there, but nowhere else. That's pretty cool. All right. It wasn't very difficult. I could show you guys that. Okay. And you could do it the other way around too. That would just switch these two menus and you could say, okay, the sphere is being acted on by these lights. Turn off these other ones. Okay. So that's kind of a neat trick that you can do digitally. Okay. Super cool. All right. So the point of 3-point lighting is to create interesting lighting to draw the viewer's attention to whatever it is we're trying to show. Now, besides just plain old 3-point lighting, and you know what it does, we can affect the way that viewers see our objects by using this type of lighting successfully. One is with the key light, we can tell people where to look because we as, human beings look at the brightest thing first, right? If this pops up, you don't look over here in the dark, right? You look at this big bright thing. And then we would be distracted by this deep dark shadow. Okay, so we fill this in. And then the rim light just helps us see, oh, okay, that's separated from the background. If you want to, you can adjust things like I'm going to turn down the intensity of the fill light. So when I turn down the intensity of the fill light like this, okay, this is a slightly more, I don't know, kind of dramatic lighting, right? If we were to turn this all the way off, okay, that's even more. So very little further than the light that's bouncing from the ground. This is more dramatic, ooh la la type lighting. If this fill light was super bright, okay, then we would have very few shadows over here and be like, oh no, there's just a ball on the floor. So you can adjust what your viewer feels about an object by how you're lighting. Now we're also not even talking about color yet. Of course, you could color the light. Okay, so if our key light has some kind of color, right now our geometry here has nothing on it, no surface, no material. Let's go ahead and make a material. No, nope, just bring it in. We're gonna be doing this all day. We don't need to do that right now. But this is 3-point lighting. Okay. And I'm going to show you a couple scenes now. So we're kind of out of Maya for a second. I'm going to show you a couple of scenes so that you can see how lighting works, like, say, in television. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a scene from The Golden Girls. And you can see that there's like barely any shadows. Now, whether or not this is daytime or nighttime or whatever room they're in, this almost looks like a play, right? There's very few shadows for several reasons. One is it's a comedy, it's a sitcom, right? And we don't have a lot of scary shadows in sitcoms. Also, these actresses are all a little bit older. You know, they're supposed to be like in their 40s. Like, that's just crazy to me. Like, I'm older than the Golden Girls. Like, that's just not even right. Okay. Um, but there's no shadows too because these are older women and you don't want a lot of shadows, right? You don't want to look like Boris Karloff. So there's tons of bounce light, tons of key light. There's like no shadows in the state of Florida. Now, if you look at this one, this is from the Vampire Diaries. Okay, Vampire Diaries. Now that's obviously the opposite extreme. This is not a sitcom, right? This is a drama. It's also about vampires. So while it's not scary, it's about vampires, and everything they do is at night. So the way they lit scenes here, there's very little difference. There's usually like a key light and almost no fill light. So when you look at scenes in the Vampire Diaries or something like this, or like the originals or something like that, if you look, or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, something like that. Now that's a weird one because it is a comedy, but it's also a drama and kind of a horror comedy. But depending how you're supposed to feel would show whether or not we fill in the shadows. So in this scene from the Vampire Diaries, you see that there's a really bright key light and you can see that it's almost really acting as a rim light also, but there's almost no fill light. So all the black and all the shadow and the blacks of their clothes and the shadows on the wall all blur into one darkness. And it draws our eye to what's going on, and it's very dramatic. Now, of course, you've got film noir, which was a whole different thing. That was in black and white. And film noir often had what was just rim light or what was called a kicker, where it was just a light that wasn't necessarily a practical light, so that you saw the person smoking, or you saw their eyes through the blinds, or you saw, the bright glow on the woman's face. They're lights that don't necessarily make a lot of sense other than almost like a character. So as you're lighting your objects, as you're lighting your scenes in 3D or anywhere in painting and drawing and photography, keep in mind 3-point lighting and what is the purpose? What are you trying to show us? Because the lighting makes a huge difference. All right. I hope that helps. Of course, we went longer than I thought, so I'm glad I didn't get even more distracted. All right, you guys. Hopefully that was helpful, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.